A lot of people are familiar with the issue of starting to draw something and then running out of room on the paper, or drawing something really tiny in the middle of the paper and not really considering how it looks in the overall composition. So what we are going to practice today is a drawing technique that not only will make your drawing more accurate, but it will also speed up the process and be the most efficient way to go about it. The other thing will be understanding about a picture plane and seeing how a drawing can take up the space intentionally to have accurate, well thought out composition. At your desk, we have 3 different pieces of basically cardstock paper. One of them is 5x5, the other one is 3x5, the other is 4x6. And what we're gonna do first is we are going to arrange them like this on the paper so that the 4x6 is vertical and then the 5x5 and 3x5 are horizontal, one above the other. And we're going to trace around the outside of each. So just place your hand in the middle, take your 2B graphite pencil, and trace across. Make sure to hold that nice and steady as you do. And then you can take that off, pass it to the next person, and we're gonna trace all the others the same. Okay, so now we have 3 what we would call picture planes traced onto the paper. And we are going to take photos of our hand and draw those in all 3 of these in a way that makes sense, a way that really complements the composition that we're working with. So first with the 5x5, if I focus on that, I'm gonna take a photo of my hand that is kind of compressed. I'll show that on the left over here. And I would also recommend putting it in black and white so you're just focusing on the shapes and the values. So this is a good general hand pose as long as it is kind of compressed so it fits well within this composition. We'll do a similar kind of thing for taking the photo for the 4x6, where I'll have the hand more in a vertical composition, maybe adding some of the arm in there as well. And then for the 3x5, doing more of a horizontal, something like that, so that it is going to take up the space of that picture plane very well. So before we get started here, I would recommend having your photo on the left or the right, but as parallel as you can get to the drawing surface. And you can see here, I have it edited in on the left-hand side, but if you have it perfectly lined up like that, you can kind of take your pencil and get a feel for the angles that you're looking at and then compare that to what you're seeing in your drawing, especially for the initial gesture that we're trying to get and making sure we have an accurate foundation that we're building on as we go down to those more specific shapes. I'm not necessarily thinking about drawing the hand, it's more just drawing a big general shape about where the hand is going to take up in this space. Okay, so this is a good starting point. This is exactly the kind of thing that we want to have at first, just a large amorphous shape, but the angles and positioning are accurate. So before I go any further, I'm going to refine this a little bit. Now that we have the most general shape finished, and at this point it looks nothing like a hand, but we're gonna really start working on that now. We're gonna go to the second largest or second most general shape that we see here, which in this case is the thumb. It's incredible, just with that one indication there, suddenly it changes the way that you see the entire thing. Like with that, it does start to actually look like a hand. So we're going to continue breaking it down from those larger shapes into smaller and smaller. And as we go, we're just kind of cross-checking it, seeing if there are other things that would need to shift and refining those details a bit more as we continue. the end of this process, this is about what it should look like. You can see everything is very accurately placed according to where the photo is saying things should be. There are some things that are gonna look a little bit weird, like the pinky looks kind of strange because we don't have the value structure on there yet, but at least like we can definitely tell that it's where it's supposed to be, especially when we check it against the other shapes. And as I mentioned, checking to see what negative space is created between the fingers and trying to draw that space instead of the finger itself can really be helpful, especially when fingers are coming out at really strange angles like this. So the only thing that we really have left to do on this one is to add in some of those minor details, like the wrinkles in the finger, the thumbnails, the fingernails, things like that, along with what I would call value mapping. And that is in reference to just drawing lines where things go from light to dark. So kind of marking where the shadows end, so you know where to fill that in with the graphite if we were gonna go through and shade this, and giving yourself a really good plan for where all those things are gonna be, so that then when you do go on to the shading, you know how that structure is supposed to unfold and you have the best possible steps in place to really set yourself up for success. So we are going to follow the exact same process for the 3x5 picture plane as well as the 4x6. And if you happen to finish early for any of these, you can definitely feel free to try adding some shading to it. Just make sure that you start from darkest, work to lightest, so that it looks as clean as possible.
Honey.
What you doing in the club on a Thursday? She said she only here for a girl birthday. They order